Hi, Aaron. Welcome to season 9 of Jeff's Podcast Academy. It's so great to have you here. And guys, so as you all know, if you're listening to this, I'm actually restarting this after almost 9 months. And thanks so much, Aaron, for being the first person in the season 9. So for the audience here, please tell a little bit about yourself and how you started, in this podcasting space and everything.
Okay, awesome. Jeff, it's great to be here. Also, I'm super proud that you're restarting. So many people, send their podcast to the graveyard. It's done. It's finished, and then they come back like 2 years later and they're like, "Yeah, my podcast never worked." So that's it. It never died. You just keep it going. You keep it coming. That's great, and it should be inspiration for anybody listening about podcasting. That there's always time to get back on. You just start again, and don't leave this. It's an asset. It's a huge part of your brand. It's a huge part of what you do. And people should always just keep it going, even if you turn it to like a once a month cadence or something small.
Yeah.
Always keep it. So super proud and super happy to be here with you. So my name's Ahron, and I've been podcasting on all sides of it, listening, obviously way too much listening. Embarrassed to show all of my Spotify Wrapped numbers, how much I listen and consume, and I love the medium, I love the conversations, and I love the ability to express yourself and articulate through conversation. And that's why I started my own podcast, where I was talking to my dad, and we were just having like, wisdom, truth bombs being planted, and that was a lot of fun. But then I realized I can do this at scale, and I can help other people, and I can help people produce their podcasts and really make their podcast serve as a arm to their company and to their business. And there's so many businesses out there doing amazing things, and they get distilled into one, Facebook ad or one paid ad. And here you have 45 minutes where you can literally position yourself as the leader and position yourself as the meaningful part of your business.
Yeah.
You can bring that out through the podcast. So that's what brought me here today to this world of podcast production, podcast editing. And it's a very creative business for me. I appreciate it a lot.
Awesome. And one thing I just want to add to that point is that when you mention podcasts, a lot of people would actually let that part die. And we saw this recent stat where around 80% of the podcast new episodes wasn't actually released and everything. And just to I think add to a point, a lot of people start the podcast in COVID and everything just to, I don't know, maybe just to see how the podcasting rolls. But I'm a firm believer of the roots of starting something, either let it be a business or a podcast, because I started with a heartbreak and I was so depressed in college. I was like, okay, this is where I can find my entire passion in. So I jumped in. So I think people can find their own purpose in it. I mean, even along the way, not you don't have to find it at the start itself. I think that would be really great. So do you have any roots, like something that triggered you to start the podcasting?
I love talking, and I love listening, which is interesting too. And I love the human connection. And that was the root. I actually started about a year before COVID. So COVID was this like gold rush of podcasts. I was like, yeah. Guys, I'm here. I've been here. This is where you're supposed to be. And I've also outlasted it, and I'm here after it as well. So, but it is an interesting phenomenon that you bring up, this like gold rush of podcasts that happened, and then this massive dip in the podcasts being created afterwards.
Yeah.
I think we could just talk about that right now. You can take this part out, but I think it's also fascinating like this to discuss that dip. If we discuss the dip now, of new podcasts created after COVID, I think it's strategy. I think people didn't start, and that's my answer to that, is that I don't think that we were strategic enough, and podcasts were being strategic. It was sort of like, let's start it and see where it goes, which is never a great long-term plan. And those seeds sort of like, just the root, I guess you call it, it sort of just fizzled out, and then people got jobs and people are working, and it's hard to keep it up, as you know. So I think that now we're seeing a lot of podcasts starting strategically with 50 episodes in mind. How am I going to get there? What are my topics? How can I book 50 people? They're thinking more strategically about it.
That's true, actually, because when I started, I actually started this podcast 4 years ago, around 2017 or something. And back then, I had a really, really bad phone, which would I think burst if I were even talked to 10 minutes more in that phone. So I was starting with that, but right now, I have like I think three podcasts. One of them is about marketing in Web3 and everything. Other is this just Podcast Academy. Other is one Tamil podcast, which is my native language. So I made sure that I had a proper guest list, sheet. I had a proper repurposing plan. I had everything set. I mean, that 4 years really came in handy. It took some time, but that really came in handy. And as you mentioned, strategically, do you have any pointers for those people who want to start? Like, I think now this dip would definitely be interesting for some people. They'll be like, okay, everyone stop doing it. Now it's time that we should start. Some people may be thinking that. Do you have any strategies on that?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, I think it's important when you create your strategy is like what you're saying is, are you going to have guests? Are you going to do it solo? But I think something that we're really seeing is who's your listener? Who are you trying to get? And where we've seen a lot of big success in podcasting in general in the industry, we see it with these huge podcasts that don't really have an ideal client. They're just talking about everything for everyone. And so we try to create those too. I think that that's a huge part of the strategy is figuring out who your ideal customer is. And this is just marketing. You know this from marketing as well. It's just figuring out who am I trying to get? Who am I trying to talk to? And how do I create something that's going to have those people? In terms of that, like a sub note on that is I always like the Seth Godin, his sort of strategy is like pick 10 people that could be like raging fans, just 10 people, put them in a room and like, how would you engage them? How would you talk to them? What would they want to hear from you? What would they want to take from you? And it simplifies the process because if you get 10, you can get 20, 30, 40, you can get to 1,000. But if you don't have those 10 people in mind, it's going to be very hard to create something of value each week.
Yeah.
Once you also figure out who your podcast is for, so then questions like, how long should my podcast be? How often should I be releasing? These are parts of strategy that get answered because, again, if you're talking to somebody who wants quick bursts of marketing tips, daily marketing tips, then don't make a 45-minute episode.
Yeah.
It's not going to be sustainable for you, and no one's going to listen because it's not what they want daily.
Yeah.
So your answers to these kinds of what's the right episode length, that'll be answered once you figure out who you're listening to. But I think the main strategy I like to start with is who are you talking to, and it's also a mindset shift. When you start thinking about your podcast that way, is you don't need hundreds of thousands of listeners to get sponsorships. I've had episodes with under 200 listens per episode that have gotten sponsored by big tech, not huge tech companies, but by niche tech companies, by tech companies that are, also trying to get to that niche of customer.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I guess people are tempted sometimes, right, to make sure that your podcast should be for everyone. Because I still remember one time I was, I started releasing this thing called bonus episodes. So basically, what they did was, this is kind of a strategy I did. So I know there's like a lot of fashion models out there who has like tons of following, but there is no, I don't think, accurate podcast relating to fashion models. Someone who interviews them, not a podcast at least. There'll be video interviews, there'll be YouTube videos, everything there, but not a podcast. So what I did was I reached out to this person. I think it was way back in 2018 or something. Interestingly, she actually listened to my podcast previously. So I was, so glad. So she came onto my show, and that was the first time in my first like 20 or something episodes I got 100 listens. So I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. So I just took that section and I said, I'm going to release bonus episodes. It will be like way different people. So it will be just, fashion models. Though it's not good to some extent because my main motto was to bring in people who want to start a podcast. still, it's like the listens are coming from passion models. So yeah, I just wanted to experiment in that, but then I was in, okay, but I think it's an eye opener, because imagine you can pivot like a separate podcast using that, and you can grow your audience and everything accordingly there. So yeah, that's my temptation, I think.
Yeah. But it's important because even though you have to be strategic and you have to be
Yeah.
focused, I think your feed is also this place where you can, it is scrappy podcasts. Even the biggest podcasts out there are scrappy. That's the idea. It's supposed to be like a testing ground. It's supposed to be a place where you can experiment. So there's this line of how much experiment is like too random, no one's going to listen, and how much is just like a little nugget or something a little bit off. If you make like a topic map, it's just a tiny bit off on what you're usually talking about that people are still interested enough, but and it doesn't throw them off, but it's also like a new expression for you, the host. So it's hard. It's a hard balance to find, but it's yours.
Exactly.
The feed is yours, and you can do as you wish with it.
Yeah. And we talked about the solo podcasting, and to be honest, I wanted to have this some news kind of a podcast. I'm really this a big fan of Pod News, and I don't even know how that guy does this. I actually have his email. I haven't reached out to him. I was like finding the perfect moment. Okay, I can reach out to him and then get him on the show. But the solo episodes have been not great for a lot of people. That's something for sure. I've heard a lot of people say that, who people have reached out to me. What are your thoughts on people who are wanting to start a solo podcast? Do you have any particular suggestions that they can grow?
That's a great question. I think that it really depends on the person. I personally would not be able to do. I've sat down. I have files and files and files full of audio of me just talking, and I just don't think that it's engaging enough. Knowing how I speak on conversation for myself, solo just doesn't work. So I think the person has to ask themselves, like, why am I doing this? Is this something that is actually going to be good, or am I being forced to do this? There are some
Yeah.
people who do solo episodes who are pretty bad at conversations, and they don't know they don't have the proper etiquette. Like you stop, you listen, you nod. There's a lot of etiquette that goes into conversation, especially here when you're doing it online and you're doing it over video. There's a lot. It takes talent, and it's not easy. So it seems like the solo episodes are way easier, but is that really your superpower? Is that where you're good at? So I think first figuring out if this is something that you can sustain and something that is actually going to be good. Questions of you have to ask yourself are scripting or just going off the cuff. It's really not too bad to have a script. If you're going to do a solo episode, have it up on your screen and sort of read it. There's still energy there. It's not like, oh, I'm just reading and doing a narrative. There's still a lot of energy, and you get a lot of personality. So don't be afraid of scripting, and also going off the script, but don't be afraid of scripting your stuff down. That I've seen help a lot of people. And one thing I've noticed that I'm sorry if I'm going off on tangents here. I'm trying to keep it clear to answer your question. But for solo episodes, I've noticed as well that something that helps is make segments in your solo episode. So I know I'm getting super granular here, like how to structure your show. But I think that if you have news and then pet peeves or things that you hate or things that you've noticed on LinkedIn or creators to follow, you can make sort of 2 or 3 segments within each show, and that might be more engaging as well for the listener to listen to, as opposed to just 10 minutes of you rambling on.
Yeah, I think it makes more like a YouTube channel, I guess, because some YouTube channels, they do these random videos, and I've seen them do like different playlists. For example, I'm following a YouTuber guy. He always does this video like, if I laugh, the video ends. So that's a series name. And meme and answers, that's a series name. So I think that segmenting is really great a tip actually.
That's a great point you bring up. I love this conversation as well between taking ideas from YouTube videos, because YouTube videos and podcasts are completely different, and it's like a completely different beast. But we're still working with the same, I don't know, content strategies or content topics, and there is a lot you can learn, but to just, when people take YouTube audio and just throw it onto a podcast, then I'm like, that's a cringe.
Yeah.
But there is something to learn from the way that they create their content, the way they title things. Yeah, there's a lot to learn from YouTube.
Exactly. I think that's where the radio was very popular back then, because when you think of it, with the radio, and there were a lot of cinematic things in the radio. Because back in the time when I was listening, people talking about cricket matches and everything. Today, you can't speak in a podcast about that in a cricket match, right? Like, that'll be efforts, but technology has risen so much that you need visuals for that, for some people at least. But with previously the radio, they had all the power to use our imagination. And I think the current podcasting space, whether it's guest oriented or something, I think that's what is lacking. I think that's one thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, radio,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, as we are talking about this, and I actually recently posted this LinkedIn post. I think it was way back a month or so, and I got a pretty backlash for it. But I need to ask you this. So, what would be the best genre for 2023? I mean, according to you. Then after that, I tell you what happened to the backlash.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. So I was thinking about that. Like, I, I don't I don't know what genre. Like, it's a good question, and the reason why I'm letting myself like play around and throw the question around in my head is because I don't know if podcasting is genre specific. I don't know if it has to be, is comedy popular? Yeah, comedy's really popular. But is comedy from indie podcasters popular? I don't know. So if
Yeah.
you're an indie podcaster, or you're looking to build an audience, or you're looking to build a community, then I don't know if there is one genre. It's something that, if you're looking at a podcast and saying, let me do this strategically and find a genre that's hot and rising in the charts, and then create a podcast around that, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be hard. But if you have a business, so when I answered this question and I wrote to myself as my note, I wrote business podcast. I know it's not really a genre, but it is, because I think commercial podcasting, business podcasting, revenue focused podcast, B2B podcasts, I would all put these sort of into the same category, depending on how you define each one. But I think that they're all in the same category, in the sense where they're community driven. They're trying to create a community. So it doesn't really matter what they're talking about. You're talking about tech, you're talking about AI, you're talking about financial planning. It's not really genre specific. It's just, are you doing a good job? Are you asking good questions? Are you engaging your community, your audience, your listeners? And that's how you're gonna succeed. But I would love to hear more specific about that. Your backlash. Good old LinkedIn backlash. That's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best passive aggressive backlash.
Yeah. So I actually saw the stat in Pod News that best genre was actually a true crime podcast. Now, I did some research on, okay, what is it and what is not, and I was like, it's so. Just in my perspective, I've never actually indulged in any kind of true crime podcast myself, but
Me neither. Yeah.
but I've seen a lot of YouTube and everything, and I was like, okay, this is how it would be. And based on my research, I found that getting the information might be really hard and everything, but based on the way you script content, I think it will be worth it. Okay, it will be worth the listen, and it will be worth that people might be interested to listen. I think there might be a lot of fake news, so if you provide crisp, proper news, then yeah, it's possible. So I posted it on my LinkedIn saying that this is kind of my take, that according to no, I didn't put according to Pod News. I should have done that. I didn't put. I just said this is a genre that you want to start. I just created a normal LinkedIn post, and then literally 5 to 6 people. First guy was Hector, so I actually want to invite him to my next show as well. So he said, I'm not. I'm kind of paraphrasing, saying you're wrong. It's not exactly that genre. It's very hard. It's too tough to do, and everything was there. And then conceivably 5 people was putting that. I was like, okay, this is a very good thing to. I think unless otherwise you have some experience in it, you should never talk about it. I was like, okay, fine. I just stopped that series actually. So yeah, I think have you ever worked with someone with a true crime or anything? Not at all.
No, I've done some narrative podcasts, which are really fun, which is similar.
Yeah.
But I think true crime is even like niched into the into the narrative podcast. It's
Yeah.
even more. It's a very like it's investigative, so it sort of takes the place of some of these Netflix documentaries for
Hmm.
people, and it's less time consuming. It doesn't take up their eyes and their attention that way. So I think that there's a very specific draw to it, like what you're saying to that. But narrative podcasts as a bigger genre is also an interesting thing to
Hmm.
get into. But that's art. That really takes that's hard to create, hard to edit. It takes a lot of time.
Exactly. Exactly, because I had one guest way back. His name is called Nikhil Murali, I think. So he's kind of an award-winning podcaster, with Spotify and everything. So he was mentioning that he had a full-time job and he was editing for like 7 hours in his own studio every single day. I was like, oh my god! I mean, how would someone? That's a much of dedication to create that sort of podcast, right? I mean, that was pretty huge actually. Wow. So I think the genre stuff, yeah. But okay, let me just phrase it like this: if you were to start, at the age of 18, where everyone is so high about podcasting, which genre would you think would start? Any specific genre? No, no beating around the bush. No, no, you shouldn't answer as a podcaster. It's like complete newbie.
It like yeah, it's so hard. I don't know what you would if an 18-year-old came to me and said, which genre should I start? I don't know.
Yeah.
Would you tell them to start one? That's my first question.
Uh,
Because I'm really into the strategy. Like if you don't have a
yeah.
strategy, you're gonna blow out. Okay, so I'm trying to refine it. So if an 18-year-old came to me and said, I want to put up one a month, low churn, um, I think he should pick something he's passionate about. So if it's culture, sports, and start that way. Start figuring it out because, as you know, also there's a lot of figuring out when it comes to podcasting. So start with something, start with a genre, and you'll eventually find what people enjoy what people enjoy you for, and what they want to come to you for, and you'll be able to find a specific genre. Yeah, it's not such a great answer, but I'm not so genre specific. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm gonna go
Interesting.
look back at that LinkedIn post now and see all the
No,
fire
I'll
that.
tag you there. Trust me, man. I will tag you there right away. Can definitely check that. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I would definitely, even now, I'm thinking of starting the fashion model podcast. I don't know. I was really interested in that. I don't know, mainly for the listenership. I might not be just an experimental phase, but yeah, let's see on how that goes.
Fashion podcast. It's cool. Yeah. Like you also have to think about like how you're gonna monetize this. Like,
Yeah.
are you gonna sell this podcast to fashion, or are you gonna sell it to designers? Like what's your unique proposition here that you're gonna eventually monetize? Because that could help you also
Yeah.
give you energy to continue.
Exactly. I think that's something it's pretty hard to think about. Great. So, Aaron, I think one main concept we definitely have to talk about is I think everyone is talking about it's kind of annoying, but still, I think, as a podcaster, I don't think a lot of talks have been gone into this. It's this artificial intelligence. So, I'm actually working in a company in the AI and blockchain. So, that's kind of a core service. And I have a previous lot of experience with this. But with the podcasting, there's already a lot of tools out there like transcription, descript, everything is there. But what do you think, there would be some new stuff would be coming on, or anything that you have seen new that people haven't seen around so far regarding AI in podcasting?
That's a great question. I think that yeah, so I use obviously, Descript is a really easy tool to collaborate and to edit. Adobe just put out a product very similar.
Hmm.
Adobe for podcasters, I think, and Libsyn just has also some stuff within their hosting platform. So you use it whether or not you realize it. People are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Descript's AI." Yeah, Descript was initially put out as like this AI cloning your voice kind of idea. So that definitely it's definitely AI, and the future of it, I think, is it's going to be interesting to see where this voice cloning goes, or where the voice is, because I think that there's something really different. I think about this a lot when I spoke about also earlier before about scripting and still getting out your authentic voice. I think that the written word and the spoken word are very different. And then
Hmm.
when you write a script and then you're going to have the AI speak it, it's really just speaking the written word.
Yeah.
It's similar to the difference we have between audiobooks and podcasts,
Uh,
which is an
yeah.
interesting point because they're not the same. But when you explain it to your grandmother, it's always recordings of people reading or talking, Well, so what's the difference? It's all the same, but it's not. When you're experiencing it, it's very different listening to the written word or listening to the expression of someone's mind. They're
Hmm.
like the raw expression of their mind and of themselves. And so I think that as good as AI is going to get, it's going to be interesting that it's always going to be more, I think, on the lines of an audiobook
Hmm.
than real expression. I do not think that you're going to be able to, especially now. I haven't seen anything that's at this amazing level. It's true that with the with Mid Journey, the pictures are incredible, and you could really get granular with that stuff and make it awesome. And then you have the videos as well. You can take those pictures and make videos out of them. But I think the voice and cloning a voice is something so human, something so real that it's going to get better and better and better. But it will always, I think that it'll always be prompted by script and by text, and
Yeah.
then you're always going to miss that raw human expression. I think that's why podcasting and that's why people are awesome, is because they have
Yeah.
that expression and they're able to connect two humans to another through the spoken word, and I don't think AI will be able to take that over completely.
Yeah. Interesting point that you mentioned about this audiobooks because I heard this one audiobook, just one. And the moment I heard two lines of it, I'm like, what? It's actually a romantic novel or whatever. Something led into that. I was like, why would someone, why would, this voice would be like this? I don't know if this is for this all the audiobooks, but I think there was this major robotic voice, but it's understandable. I don't think someone can read 300 or 500 pages in the same tone over and over again for like massive number of pages. Have you listened to any audiobooks?
I've listened to audiobooks. Yeah. I actually binged all of the Malcolm Gladwell books.
uh,
You got to review those every once in a while. So
hmm,
I actually reviewed those all on audiobooks, and those are incredible and well read. That's not AI.
got it, got it. Yeah, I think it depends on, I think what I read is actually AI because I have this Audible membership. I want to redeem. I have a coupon or something, but I really didn't want to do it after seeing that, audio. So I think, yeah, I think I give it a try with some other books and let's see how that goes.
I was approached by somebody recently that they had this whole system in their AI to basically curate all of the news, so that you type in and you put in prompts
Hmm.
for all these very specific news articles. It scours the internet every day for those articles and then reads them off in a podcast.
Hmm.
Um, so each day, the listener can get they can create the prompts and they can get a curated podcast based on those specific ideas, which is incredible. And
Yeah.
it's so specific and it's awesome. But after a few listens, I lost it because it is AI and it's artificial. It's
Yeah.
mechanical. It's not robotic, as you said. It's not the same. But that's going to get
Exactly.
better, and then I'm going to have to. It gets better by the day, I'm sure.
Exactly. And I think with the AI, just one point I want to add to the podcasters who are listening, because when this chat GPT and all the AI tools came in, a lot of business owners, even that's one of the hurtful things I've seen, is that on Instagram, not much on LinkedIn, but on Instagram, saying that this chat GPT will ruin your business, will ruin your life. You're a content writer, you will be screwed. And then they were like talking a lot of things. I mean, it's understandable that when the RPA came, automation came, these things came, everyone said that the job of the IT people will be gone. But just imagine now how much IT people are, I mean, layoffs happening for some other reason, but not exactly this. But these people are always saying that, like hype, how to say this, hyping. I think in podcasting, the AI stuff is not that much into it yet, and even if that is, I think it will still be used as a tool by the podcasters rather than life ending things. I think that's one point I want to add to this here.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Awesome. So just before going to the final section, I said morning or evening there?
We're evening.
Evening. Okay. So this is always a question I asked my guests out of the box. Who was actually the last person that you made smile today?
My kids. My
Ah,
kids. I came out from my office at home, and and I like to give everyone hugs. And so I was just thinking if they smiled. Sometimes I give the hug even if they don't smile or they're crying. But they did. They smiled, and that always gets me back in the office happy.
interesting. That's awesome. That's awesome. Great. So just coming on to the final section of the podcast, and so we have already, I think, crossed COVID. I know after 2 years went, but 2022 has been a major concept for a lot of people with regarding layoffs or whatever, and everything's going on. What do you think has changed in the podcasting industry last year, and what do you think that might come in this 2023? Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, I think so much stuff is everything's moving on to podcasts. I think it's a great um, like breeding ground for new ideas. People are going to be doing, 10 part series on for narrative podcasts, and those are going to become movies or TV shows at this point. There are no movies, but things are. It's going to be a breeding ground. It's going to be a place for conversations. So I think podcasting is on it's definitely up. Even though we've seen, like we mentioned, the shows going down, but I
Yeah.
think that as a whole, the industry is going up. Sponsorships for indie podcasters and for smaller um, influencers, if you will, in podcasting. But I think that the main thing is the thing I mentioned earlier was strategy. People are going to have real strategy, promotion strategy, content strategy, engagement strategies when it comes to their podcasts. And we're going to see a lot more. You're going to get a lot more emails of like, I have this podcast. It's going to be much more specific. It's not just going to be random. Can you guess? Because you're good at this. It's going to be, you're part of my strategy. You're part of how I'm going to grow this show. So I think that the overall and very specific strategies we're going to see a lot of that this year.
Awesome. And just to add to that point, I think this Bitcoin stuff. I think one of the things that I've added there is that since I'm working in this blockchain space, I haven't seen much of how to say this intrusion in blockchain and everything in podcasting. But I think the invention of NFTs and all the other platforms, I think that might enter podcasting, but it won't be called as an NFT. Might be something else. I think people will use that
Like for
technology.
clips, like if you use, you can create like NFTs out of clips or just pictures
Yeah,
or stills or.
exactly. So basically, not just that. So I recently saw this social media examiner. I think you must have heard of them. So they released an NFT, and they said that if you mint this NFT, you will get Web3 news as emails. So I minted that, and I'm getting like Web3 news every single day from them. So this Michael Stesson guy, he does everything, literally, to be honest. So kind of like that. If you're a podcaster, imagine that if you've listened to, let's say, 5 episodes, and if you mint this NFT, that means you have done this, so we'll give you a reward. So I think in that way it might go more
Interesting.
utility based. Yeah,
Gamifying podcasting a bit. Yeah.
exactly. Because I think it might come because right now people are more interested to listen podcasts while driving or working out. They're not actively engaging, but there are a lot of micro podcasts popping up every single day. I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes of news or whatever it is. In that way, maybe, yeah, I think it would be pretty interesting.
Cool. Yeah, like we see like Spotify put the Q&A
Yeah.
on some of their I don't know, some countries they have this like
Mhm.
you can start engaging with creators on the actual platform, on the
Yeah,
actual, so that's also
maybe.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, let's see how that goes. So Aaron, thanks so much, for hopping onto the show. And so now, right now, tables turned. Is there anything else that you want to ask me?
Um
Are you
yeah, how do
connected?
you yeah, sorry. I see as a podcaster I just know Also, I know the work I'm giving you now to edit this stuff, but
Yeah, I was
like,
like, please don't ask it as question.
but I do like there's certain things you know how to do. Like I'll make the editing easier for you. You stop, you pause, you give that break so you know how to where it begins and ends. You don't have to sit there and granular and find between two
Yeah.
where my question starts. Um, what is your favorite podcast trend that you see from your vantage point from where you are? I think you have a very interesting relationship with just this overall podcast industry, and I'm curious to hear what a trend is that you see happening that you think is cool, amazing, and is going to go far.
Yeah. So one thing I've seen recently is that for new podcasters, at least, if they are starting up, if they just do audio episodes, or they just put uh, audio episode in Weed, or in Wave or something, and then edit it and put it on Instagram, that's just not going to be enough. So you have to be very specific. So one thing I'm trying right now is that I'm taking a piece of my particular clip, and then I'm putting it on Medium, and so that's basically like a question and an answer. So let's say, for example, a question is, what are virtual tools for? And I have a specific answer, uh, you know answered by an expert. No bluff, no top to bottom skyscraper content, straightforward answer. What is that? How much does it cost? So I think that's one thing listening in podcasting in recent days, is that if you ask a question, you need an answer. I think that's what people, because I think the chat GPT blew up because with Google you have to go through a lot of stuff. You need to understand what is happening. But imagine if you search something and someone is talking to you in a podcast manner, then just like that, in each medium. Right now, I'm testing it in a blog side of way. So probably I think this micro kind of question answer. Please don't beat it on the bush, saying a lot of things from top to bottom for SEO's sake. I think that's a trend maybe I'm myself trying to create. I don't know, but yeah, that's something that I'm really looking forward to. Just Q&A. Please don't talk too much. I mean, if that's a podcast, then it's fine. There are people for it, but there's a huge mass audience who wants just a Q and answer. So yeah, maybe that's a trend.
Awesome. I'm happy I asked that. That's a great answer.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks Aaron again for asking that super question, and then for being on the show. If people want to find you and your services, please let me know. Then I can put them on the links.
Yeah, LinkedIn. That's my baby now. Find me on LinkedIn. You can get tools, tips, talk to me, engage with me. It's a fun place.
Awesome. So, guys, I'll definitely link all of those things in the description below. You can go and check them out. And again, Aaron, thank you so much for hopping on the show. And thank you so much for how to say, starting up the season 9. It's so great, and I love you for that. And yeah, I'm sorry if I spoke too fast. I know that's a thing always, but yeah. So, guys, until next time, Jeffrey signing off. We'll see you in the next episode.